Hey, what's up? I'm Bryan.
And I'm Karla.
And today we're taking a look at a review of a game from the both of us. But this is a one-player game. How are we doing that? So question of the day. What is your
I don't
favorite?
play one-player games.
I don't either.
What's the question of the day?
What's your favorite one-player game? And why is it Metal Gear Solid, not the board game, even though that's great, Chrono Trigger, any of those? Because today we're taking a look at
Final Girl.
all of them. Well, all the ones we have. You say, Bryan, why are you both doing this review if you both don't play one-player games? Well, here's why. We decided to play, based on Van Ryder's own suggestion, Final Girl at 2 players.
So I love Mansions of Madness, and I am a fan of the horror genre ever since I was in college when I took a horror class, and I've seen basically every horror movie. So I was convinced that if it was a multiplayer game, then I would like it. So we just played it as though it were a multiplayer game.
That's exactly what we
Co-op
did.
game, I guess.
Co-op. That's right. So what we did was we just played together. We made the decisions together. And here's the deal. If you'd asked me a few months ago, does that even make sense? I'd have been like, no, until Metal Gear Solid came out. And the first several missions you play, your 4 people or 2 people are playing as 1, 2, or 3 characters until you unlock everybody. So it actually kind of was already primed in our system to do this. So let's take a look at how it plays, and we'll come back up, talk final thoughts right now. All right, this is Final Girl setup. This is Wolf Asylum with the Ratchet Lady with Veronica. Sounds a lot like Clue, but here's the deal. The idea of what you're doing here is there are 3 major variables that you can change up completely. You can change the killer, you can change the location, you can change the Final Girl, which means you can play Veronica in the Storybook Woods with the Razorface if you want to. So that's 3 different feature films I have over here. You can take one piece out of each of them and play them. It's completely module based like that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to be playing based on time. So you start with 6 time in the round, and usually you'll start with a certain amount of threat or horror. Now the way it works is you're going to be spending actions on your turn based on dice rolls. There'll be horror checks, and certain things can mitigate that in order to do certain actions. One thing of note is that you can't walk every turn. If you wanted to, you'd need a card like walk or sprint that allows you to move every turn. There are certain things that allow you to do that. So because our horror is in the 5 range, we roll 2 dice for checks. If you ever get up here, it's 1 dice. If you ever get down here, it's 3. Plus, if you ever have 1 hit point left, or if the killer has 1 hit point left, you roll 1 additional dice. Now this is interesting too. It serves as your last health, but also, once you flip it over, if it shows another heart back on here, just like any good horror movie, you pop back up to life and you start 1 more round fighting again. Same with them. They get to do that as well. Much like any great killer slasher movie, they have a chance to come back. A couple things of note before we get started. The map is up there on the top right. There are the items as well. Now this one has a special effect called pills. You're going to be in the asylum looking around, and you're going to take one of the pills to start with. You have the pill effect card here. Now I'm not going to teach you exactly how that works because you may not have this version of Final Girl. You may have one of the other feature films. But just know every single location brings something new and fun and twisted like that to the game. So let's just say on our turn, we're starting here based on the setup card. The killer's here with her minions, and that's the way she works. Again, not everybody works like that. The minions and the killer have an action up here. So we're going to take our turns first. A couple ways that phase can end. One is if you run out of time here. Another one is if you ever come across an action like this that shows that the end of the phase happens. That's such a bad roll there. You would end the phase. And the third way to end the phase is you choose to just end the phase with a certain amount of time. And the reason you do that is because down here in the tab below, you have cards that you can buy with much better actions. Now here's the thing. This is not a deck builder. So these are one and done. So once you bought this for 2 or 4 or 5 or 6, you're going to lose it after you play it. Now that's important to remember. Things like walk would be how you move across the board. Now you'll notice that the areas are connected. Some of the maps are easier to follow what's connected to others than some of the other maps. And each map looks different. If they have an orange place around them in the map, you can search to get items using the search action. Once you take those items, they may power you up. You may get the defibrillator, which stuns the enemy. A knife adds damage. The mysterious pills allow you to take two more pill tokens. There's events that will happen. You'll always start the mission or start the game with an event that starts out, kind of variables the game completely. So even if you only had one feature film, let's just say you just had this one, which is... oh gosh, can't think of the actual name of the movie, but it's the Ratchet Lady at the Wolf Asylum with Veronica. Let's just say you played with this same setup 3 times in a row, 4 times in a row. Because the variation of the starting cards and the event cards, it wouldn't feel the same. Plus, with the Terror deck, you're going to take all the cards for Ratchet Lady and all the cards for Wolf Asylum, or your killer and your location. You're going to shuffle them all together. You're going to draw 10, and that will give you the Terror deck. So the way the phase works is once you've chosen to end your turn, or your turn ends based on something you couldn't control, you'll buy your cards. They'll go into your hand. Cards you played this round will stay down here, unable to be bought right back, which means you couldn't play a walk, a weak attack, and then immediately buy those back, even though they're free. You're basically going to have to wait around in between using cards and buying them back, which is good because there's usually 2 of the weaker ones up here. So like Calm, Sprint, Search. Calm is one for this one because you can turn maniacs back into victims. Why that's important is you'll notice green spaces on the board. These are exits. You can take as your final girl, and anytime you move into a space with a victim, you can move them with you, up to 2. And if you get them into this green space, or case in point, this is a really easy space. If you were to walk in there, 1, 2, 3, because they're already standing in that green space, you would rescue them. They would come off the board and go onto your final girl board here. You'll get any bonuses you cover, plus once you've covered it completely, you'll flip it over and get your special power. Once you win the game, there's also an unlockable per final girl with some secret item that you can then use in later times playing. Or, since you paid for the game and bought the game, you can just open up and use it in the first time you play it. But it's definitely achievements mode on right there. Both final girls play different in each feature film. Every killer plays wildly different. In case in point, Ratchet Lady has no cap on her top health. She's not, I've never seen another one like that, or there probably are, but she can heal indefinitely, and that will come into play pretty heavily. Once your turn is over, you'll buy your cards, and then you'll go into what's known as the killer phase. This one, notice, has minions. So if there's a minion on the board, which there's 2, the minions will move towards the final girl by the amount of spaces that a minion can walk. Minions can walk 1 space. The Bloodlust track shows kind of how strong of attack and how fast the Ratchet Lady can move. Notice she's weaker than the Big Bad Wolf. He could attack really heavily and move very fast. She moves very fast, but she's not that strong. So as victims start dying, whether by minions or the Ratchet Lady killing them, not only will they panic and spread, we'll cover that another time. You can watch how to play on that. You're essentially going to roll a dice and just follow whichever way they go. The Bloodlust will raise each time a victim is killed, and this will make her stronger. Once it hits the dark power, you'll flip over the bottom part. And again, this is why I say if you only have one feature film, there are 3 different dark powers and 3 different finale cards. So you'll flip these over to see what special dark power she gets when you're playing this version, and then you'll flip it over and see which finale you're facing. And they're different based on which card you choose for the Ratchet Lady. You're going to keep playing until either you're dead or the killer's dead. Once the killer has taken her turn on those actions, you'll then take the Terror card and flip it over. So again, you'll see the cards here for the Ratchet Lady and for Wolf Asylum. You'll follow what this says. A couple things on the symbols. They can target different people. So if it shows this, the enemies will target either the final girl or the closest victim. If, case in point, there's no victim close and she's still in your space, but she's targeting a victim and supposed to attack, well, they won't attack you, which is pretty great. So you can avoid that. A couple different things with that to avoid. This also has pills you can pick up, and there's other things like that in each single feature film that is completely different, that certainly flavors it a lot like you're playing the movie or game that they're based on. Horror checks are done with dice. You're going to roll. Let's just say we're rolling 4 dice. Because we got 2 stars, you'll take the 2-star result. If you got 1 star, you take the 1-star result. If you got no stars, you'll take the no star result, which are not always completely bad. Sometimes you'll still get to do something good, but they're usually pretty bad. But there's only 2 stars on each dice. There is a mitigation factor with 3s and 4s where you could discard 2 cards to make a 3 or 4 into a success, but you only have a certain amount of cards. So you may not want to do that because you may need to save them for next round. You'll play until the killer's dead or you are dead, and that is how you play every Final Girl, but specifically with some extra flavor from the Ratchet Lady in the Wolf Asylum with Veronica. So that is Final Girl. It is a teach roughly of how to play the whole system, with most of the flavor being the Ratchet Lady. Silent Hill, love it. So the concept, as you know, we do a rubric system. We take 7 categories, break it down, give you an average score to give you an aggregate. That was her idea, because I never would have thought of that. To give you a more fair score. So, first of all, concept.
It's because my background is in education.
That's true.
And you need a rubric for absolutely everything.
Rubrics of the day. Concept for me is a 9. I think this is fantastic. The notion of taking pastiche, very much heavily influenced by certain horror movies or video games, and making them into these missions or feature films. So the concept for me is a 9. What do you think about it?
To me, I'd say that's a 10 because I love the idea of playing as the final girl in movies, even though, I mean, horror movies are known for their tropes. And
Yeah. But that's what makes them fun. And to me, what I like about this, speaking of tropes, like, for instance, if you die or almost die, you flip over your token and you may just pop back up after suffering a horrible injury. Same thing with the bad guy. You could put 6 bullets in Jason Voorhees' head, pops back up. So you give it a 10. That's pretty high praise. I like it. I'm giving it a 9.
the idea.
Yeah. You are the final girl when we played. We thought we were going to lose.
We were the final girl, I guess,
That's
because
true.
we played it together.
It's true. The board layout. Now, I'm going to caveat this here because we have the mats, the player mats. I don't think it matters so much. Like, I like the player mat. I really enjoy it. But I don't think that would hurt the way the board gets laid out. You put your killer, your location, and your area here. The mat's nice, so it helps. So I give that a 9 for the board layout. Everything has a neat little place, even if you don't have the mat. So 9 for me on board layout. What do you think about actually the layout of the game?
Okay, I would say it's an 8 because I would prefer the map part where the meeples are walking to be a little bit bigger.
That's true. I can see that because the boxes are meant to be small.
But it's an easy board.
It is tight though. Those numbers are hard to see for panic mode.
And so I'm having to stand up and look over the table to see what numbers they are.
That's a good point. So I guess if you were playing solo and not with the mats, you could bring that part down in front of you. Because that's the only downside is when you're playing with the mats.
And it could also be because it's a solo game that we're playing as a co-op.
It never occurred to me either that I could pick the mat up and move it to the top and bring the other mat down. I guess that's not either. Yeah. So it's up to you. But yeah, that's a good point. I wish the maps were a little bigger too. The mechanics of the game, I gave an 8 here. There's actually one of my only 2 8s for this. Spoiler. You are playing cards to do actions. You're rolling dice. I love horror checks like in Mansions of Madness and all that sort of stuff. So I give it an 8 for the actual mechanics themselves. What do you think?
Okay, I'm going to give it a 7 because I love, getting successes, but there's only 2 successes on each dice. So you're already going to probably lose most of your rolls.
Well, and when you don't, you get the 3 and 4, and it's like, do you want to discard 2 cards? And you're like, no.
No, because then you lose time, which it's fine. It worked out. Usually we won the game.
We're putting the time lapse up, so I don't know if you can see how many times we said, you don't get to roll anymore. He
thinks that he forgets that it's a co-op solo game, and I was like, it's my turn to roll.
Well, my rolls are terrible, so probably for the best. The art direction here, these would be the symbols on the board themselves telling you what to do. There's not a lot of them. In the back of the rule book shows you what every single symbol is. To me, 9 straight out of the gate because it's so clear to see what the symbols are. The only reason it's not a 10 for me is because I also rarely give 10s, is because...
Why?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Why do you have to be hypercritical? Because if you were in school and then your teacher gave you a 90 instead of 100, it's because I don't give a 100. That would be a problem.
That's a good point. Okay, well, that changes my next score and my math for the next problem, so I'm going to have to do the math in my head really quick. But yeah, the art direction is nice because everything does have a symbol. Sometimes, though, because if the killer gets a health back and you get a health back, they're the same symbol. So you just have to know who's getting healed when, which is really not the hardest thing to know. So what about you with the symbols?
I would also say that it's fairly high. It's an 8 for me because, as he said, it does get a little confusing about whether when you're new to the game. I'm sure you people who've played it 100 times are used to this. Do I get the health back? Does the health come off of the bad guy?
Where does the
But
health go when you're putting it onto
yeah,
the minor dark power, whatever it's called? That stuff gets a little tricky too. The art is the one I'm going to change, and since we don't need to be hypercritical, that's correct. I'm going to give the art a 10 in this game. And here's why. There's so many wonderful artists. Every one of them is different. Every single box, every single feature film is a different artist. And somehow they found the right artist to do the right games because they just look great. Like the Ratchet Lady looks awesome. The whole art there. The one that's a little more cartoony that I really want to play is like the Strangers. It's phenomenal. All
what's
the
the
art.
Red Riding Hood one?
That's the one Julie did the story for. I don't know who did the art for it, but it's great. I
Hold on,
really love
2
the art. But
seconds.
Once
You can
Upon
cut
a
this.
Midnight. Yeah. Tyler Johnson did the art for the Big Bad Wolf. It looks really great.
It's
Once
called Final Girl Once Upon a Full Moon.
Final Girl, Once Upon a Full
Not Big
Moon.
Girl. What'd you say? Big Bad Wolf.
Oh, Big Girl. No. Yeah, Final Girl.
Big Bad Wolf is not the
It's
name.
not the name of it.
That is the villain, however.
It is. Or, unless you don't want it to be. That's the other thing I
That's
like.
true. You can mix and match.
Which gets us to the gameplay. I'm going to give it an 8 for this because sometimes it's frustrating to get the cards you want. But the reason why it's high, and 8's still very high, is because I do like the variability. I like that you can play Big Bad Wolf in the asylum if you wanted to.
And who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, who let a Big Bad Wolf into an asylum? First of all, probably the local authorities, but why?
In the gameplay, I would say it's an 8 as well. I really enjoy the idea of shopping for cards as though you're playing a little deck builder. Don't love having to get rid of the cards I just purchased. That kind of drives me crazy, the rebuying
Yeah,
of
they're
the
so
cards.
expensive.
They're very expensive, but I do like if you don't spend time that you spend the time on better cards.
That's right. If you
The
don't
age-old
spend
question.
if you don't spend time, you'll have better cards, ladies and gentlemen. That sounds like a proverb on the wall. Perfect. Yeah, no, I agree. The rule book for me is an 8 because it's pretty straightforward. The only thing I didn't find in there easily, which is something we needed to know, was what happens when you get to the top of the Bloodlust track. And it's not in the Bloodlust setup page, and it's not in a clearly labeled spot. And maybe I'm missing it, but that's an important rule because your killer will just keep getting better and better, and you just need to know what to do with that top power. So that's my only quibble with the rule book. Other than that, it has a fantastic reference guide on the back.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't read the rule book, so this was my rule book. So
Hey!
if we've taught this wrong or played wrong, blame him.
So you're saying the rule book's a 10 out of 10 is what you're saying?
It's got to be right.
Hey. Yeah, so my...
Oh wait, sorry, missed the joke.
Hey,
Let's rewind.
So then my final score comes to, I think now, an 8.7 since I gave the rulebook a 10. So that puts like 8.75. You could round that up to a 9 if you want, but I'm going to keep it solidly at an 8.5 due to the involvement. What about you? You can just throw it out of the gate if you want.
I'm gonna need to do some math. All right. On my scientific method, I believe it is over an 8
Yep, over
based
an
on my numbers that I said in this review.
Yeah, we just found some different categories put together.
It's kind of unfair since I can't fairly rate the rule book
It's
because
true.
I'm not gonna go read it.
No.
But I'm sure it's great if he didn't mess up any of the rules.
There's a good chance I did.
And we usually play games wrong at least the first few times.
That's the joke that we have. James, our friend, who you remember the guy from Twilight Imperium who flipped the table. It's my favorite story. He always gripes at me about that. I'm sure we're playing 2 or 3 rules wrong, so he's teaching. I was like, hey, all
It
right.
doesn't sound like that.
He sounds a little like that. You'll have to meet him one day. But that is Final Girl. I think what really is cool, and I will say, I'm not going to play this solo because I just don't play solo games. I'm just going to go play Elden Ring if I'm going to play a solo game.
I'm not gonna do that.
But I do like playing this at 2 players. It did not feel like we were playing a 1-player game split between 2 players. It actually felt like we were talking about what our actions. Because when we play Mansions of Madness, is what we do anyway. We're like, oh, I think you should go here, or I think maybe I'll go here. What do you think? You know. So I think that's really great. But also the variability, the idea that you can do any killer.
Oh, did you mention in your teach that whenever you complete the game with, say, Red Riding Hood, you
Mhm.
get a special card to go in next time you play with her,
Yeah.
or whichever character you've played with.
What I said to the teacher was that you can, once you beat this, you can unlock it. I said, or since you bought the game, you can unlock it at any time you
You
want.
can't do that because that is against the spirit of the rules of the book you read.
That's like Time Stories. That Tom was like, if you ever look at this, even outside of the game, you lose points next time you play. I'm like, no, I don't. I own this game. You don't tell me what to do, Time Stories world.
Then I guess you're just a false loser.
I am.
Wait, no.
A false winner?
A false winner.
A serious loser.
You're a serious loser then if you peak.
So that is Final Girl, all the above. I want to play more of these now. Like I really, really want to play the one that's based on the Strangers. I don't know if we can even say that, but it's the one that's clearly pastiche of the Strangers.
I mean, I can say it, they can't.
That's true. Yeah, they can. I'm Bryan.
And I'm Karla.
We are the Final Girls. Girl. She's the Final Girl. I'm Bryan.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vassell.